I am Lori Murray, President of the Committee for Economic Development of the Conference Board, and welcome to Leadership in Challenging Times, a series of discussions with the prominent business leaders whom we are honoring this year. No one could have predicted even several months ago where we are in the grasp of a global pandemic, a deep recession, and growing civil unrest. If there ever was a time for leadership from the nation's business community, it is now. The Distinguished Performance Awards is a decades-long tradition at the Committee for Economic Development. Each year we honor a preeminent group of U.S. business executives who exemplify leadership in both their companies and their communities. It pays tribute to the legacy of CED's founders, America's leading CEOs who during World War II heeded the call to public service to guide the transition from a wartime to a prosperous peacetime economy. Highlighting the outstanding work of our Distinguished Performance Awardees offers the business community strong examples they can follow. History has shown that when business helps solve key economic and educational challenges, the benefits extend throughout society. Today I have the distinct pleasure of interviewing one of CED's 2020 awardees, Vicki Hollub, who is President and Chief Executive Officer of Occidental, an international oil and gas exploration and production company with operations in the United States, the Middle East, and Latin America. She has been a member of Occidental's board of directors since 2015. During her 35-year career with Occidental, Vicki has held a variety of management and technical positions with responsibilities on 3 continents, including roles in the United States, Russia, Venezuela, and Ecuador. Most recently, she served as Occidental's President and Chief Operating Officer, overseeing the company's oil and gas, chemical, and midstream operations. Vicki serves on the boards of the American Petroleum Institute and Lockheed Martin. She's the chair of the U.S. Secretary of Energy Advisory Board and the U.S. chair for the U.S. Columbia Business Council. And she is also a member of the Oil and Gas Climate Initiative and the World Economic Forum, where she serves on the stewardship board for the Platform for Shaping the Future of Energy and Materials. Thank you so much, Vicki, for joining us today. I'd like to start by asking you to step back and give us your assessment of where we are as a country, as a society. You know, we've been in crises before, 9/11, unrest for social justice, global health crises, AIDS, MERS, SARS, the Great Recession. What do you see as different about the current situation? It's been called unprecedented. And do you think lasting change is possible? And how do you see the way forward?
Well, I think this is different. I think it is unprecedented. I think that this is like a perfect storm of every stress that you could throw against members of our society around the world in terms of their own lives. So here we have corporations that are financially stressed. That then puts stresses on our employees with respect to their own finances, while at the same time, they're worrying about their health and the health of their family members. In addition to all of this, they've been placed in situations where they're isolated from their coworkers. They're isolated from the business and the thing that they are used to doing on a daily basis. Their whole routine has changed. So I think from a psychological standpoint and personal emotional standpoint, this is probably one of the worst scenarios that we could ever have such a significant population of the world go through. And you layer on top of that the fact that we all are becoming more and more aware of what's happening to those who are less fortunate than us or who are different than we are and who have greater challenges than some of us have. Putting all that together, this is a scenario where we have to step up and do something about the things that need to change. And I think it's evident in what we see from our employees, how they think about things. For the first time ever, I've gotten emails from our employees, not about our business, not about what's happening within our company, but what's happening in the world externally. And our employees care about it. And as we're worrying more about ourselves and our families, that is starting to translate into caring about others more, I think at a higher level than we ever have.
And COVID-19 has really shone a spotlight on its different effect on different, the underprivileged, the less fortunate. And Occidental as a major international company has taken significant actions to mitigate the impacts to its business and its people due to the unprecedented COVID-19 pandemic. How would you describe some of the greatest challenges you faced over the past several months? How did you engage? And what are the most important lessons that you would share with other business leaders?
I think the two biggest things for me first is around our shareholders. As we were facing the pandemic, as you know, we had a significant drop in oil and gas prices in our industry. So the oil and gas industry, like a few other industries, has been hit really, really hard. The combination of both these crises has gotten us to a point where we've had to make some very tough decisions. And beginning with our shareholders, we had to, for the first time in 18 years, stop growing our dividend. And actually, we had to significantly cut our dividend. We were faced with a liquidity challenge. And so we had to look at what do we do for our shareholders over the long term value of the company versus the short-term needs of making it through this crisis, not only for our shareholders, but our employees and those stakeholders in the company. So we made some very fast decisions, and it was the most challenging period that I've certainly ever faced. And we had to make decisions that I really didn't think I would have to make. So it was immediately cut the dividend, immediately cut capital, start focusing on near-term liquidity because we weren't sure how long this would last. And then that translated in what do we do then with the rest of our cost and what do we do with our employees? And we chose during this period not to lay off employees. We had just gone through a significant acquisition, which did cause us to reduce our staff. But even through that, we made sure that there was a focus on our employees, our shareholders, our stakeholders. And so what we did during the transformation of our company through that acquisition and into this pandemic is we had voluntary separation packages for the bulk of the employees that we needed to reduce in our organization. And we took a lot of care to make sure that was done with the employee in mind to help us to achieve our goals and objectives, but in a way that was not destructive to them or their personal lives. So those two decisions were the two of the biggest. Was how do you manage liquidity and how do you preserve the value of the company so that you can position yourselves to return your dividend and start growing shareholder value after we get out of the crisis. And then secondly, how do you make sure that as you're going through it, you're being very thoughtful about how you manage people and the impact on their lives as you come through it. We managed both of those. Those were some very tough decisions, but what we did is we made them very quick, very decisive, and made sure that we preserved our capabilities and our liquidity. And now I would say we're in our recovery mode at this point.
That's great to hear. It sounds extremely challenging. And, as a global company, you're seeing firsthand how the global pandemic is adversely affecting economies and people around the globe and your workforce around the globe. And our tensions with China are at an all-time high. What do you see as some of the greatest challenges in our relationship with the world's leading and emerging economies? And how should U.S. businesses respond at this time?
I think U.S. corporations have the opportunity to be ambassadors for our country. I believe our relationships that we have with not only the governments of other countries, but also the corporations within other countries. I think as long as we do our business in a way that represents our country well, that's the highest integrity and ethics, that creates scenarios where there's a win-win situation, where we combine businesses, we combine projects with other companies and countries where we both have the opportunity to create value and to create value for our shareholders and for them to create values for their country and or their shareholders as well. So I think that having that sort of relationship, building that trust helps us to understand each other better. And it gives us the opportunity to provide feedback to our government here, as well as understanding and helping to translate what's happening in the U.S. for our international partners. I think we can build trust.
Was it challenging dealing with the different rules that the various governments around the world were imposing because of COVID-19 in terms of how to respond to your global workforce?
We tried to take the most conservative approach that we could, no matter who was asking for what. And if we ran across a scenario where someone was asking that we do something different because they felt it was better, we analyzed that, and if it made sense to us, we applied it to everybody around the world. So we're trying to be ultra conservative. We want to make it through this. We want to ensure that our employees and their families make it through this as well.
Yeah. So with the COVID-19 crisis, we've seen the role of the U.S. government, both in terms of the U.S. economy, and of course that has an impact on the global economy, and on public health, is unprecedented. How do you view the role of the CEO, both prior and now during this crisis, the role of the CEO within the company and with respect to the public square and public policy?
I think that certainly the biggest change for me and biggest learning about how I could do things differently as the CEO has come about as a result of what's happening in our society today and how our employees are reacting to it. Our employees are just a subset of society anyway. And so to hear their views and to understand what matters to them, that's important for me to know. And it's important for us to, as corporations with the strength that we have and representing the employee base that we have, to become more active in what's happening in our world, to try to improve the scenario and the situations. And I think some of this societal unrest today needs to be addressed, and it needs to be addressed by all of us in some way. And our employees care about what happens to others, and we need to care too. I think corporations should have a conscience, and they need to act on that. And we need to do the things that we can to help those that are less advantaged. We need to help society. I think a lot of the things that we face today are because there are differences that shouldn't exist. And if we can address that and make those situations better, I think it's better for our corporation, it's better for our employees, and in the long term will benefit our country as well.
And as a final question, there are many unknowns, but the one thing that's clear is that we're not returning to the economy of January 2020. How have the tectonic events of the past several months changed the way your company works, the way you lead? What's different from a year ago? And how lasting do you think those changes will be?
Well, I think that what's happened is it's been certainly a tragedy for the world. And we feel for those, and our hearts and prayers go out to those who've been impacted in some way, whether it's through the fatalities and deaths of family members or their own personal experiences, pain, and going through having experienced maybe COVID-19 themselves. So we care about those that have had the bad experiences. But what we always need to do is figure out what are the advantages of the situation that we're in now. What learnings can we take and apply to our business as we go forward? And what we think is going to happen is that I certainly view how we manage our workforce today differently than I did before. I would have never thought that we could have our entire population work from home and work as well as they have. They've really done an incredible job. They've continued to exceed our expectations. And our second quarter results from an operations standpoint were way above what I expected. There was no drop off, no drop of anything. Everybody has really performed well. So it's made me realize that we can operate differently and we can be more flexible with our workforce. And I think the flexibility that we can now instill in our workforce is going to provide a much better quality of life for employees as we go forward. And I think we've had for a while programs that would help both mothers and fathers spend time with their children, whatever age they were. We've implemented some things that have helped that situation. But now that we know that our employees can work from home and be very productive, I think it's going to enable us to address the work-life balances much better than we have in the past, which will also help us to address the scenario where many of the women in our workforce feel a need almost when they get to mid-career to stay at home or to drop out of the workforce for a while. I think we can address those challenges and those concerns and maintain our workforce intact better, but with people, with our employees having the opportunity to do things differently and for us to work differently. So I think that the workforce will be different. I think we have to have the bulk of our employees back in the office most of the time because we need to have that personal connection, that in-person connection. It's important. It's going to help us to, I think, continue to maintain our culture and to build on it. But otherwise, I think it provides some unique opportunities for the workforce of the future to better balance their home life with their work requirements.
Well, it's interesting. The data shows, and it's actually the Conference Board economists have shown that women are among the worst hit during COVID-19. But listening to you, they may actually come out of this tremendous challenge much better off in terms of workplace balancing and being able to continue to succeed and prosper in the workplace.
I think they will.
Vicki, thank you so much for joining us. It is truly our honor to recognize your leadership this year and in this unprecedented year. And we really appreciate you joining us today. And we look forward to the October 27th awards event. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.